Chosen One, the members of this dark cult are being eliminated by your God, and the very Jinn they summoned to destroy you, and your God is absolutely smoking the cult that tried you. While you were living your life completely unaware, these fools gathered in their pathetic emergency meeting, asking how is this person still breathing, after throwing everything they had at you: forbidden knowledge, ancient relics, entities that would shatter mortal minds, only to watch it all backfire spectacularly, because they never understood that challenging someone with your divine appointment is essentially signing their own cosmic death warrant. Here these self-proclaimed masters of metaphysical domination sat, staring at irrefutable proof that you had annihilated their efforts completely. Every ritual they had engineered with obsessive precision to destroy you had not merely failed but had rebounded toward them with exponential force. What they couldn't grasp was that you represent someone whose protection was inscribed into the fundamental architecture of reality itself, and their attempts to harm you had just signed their own cosmic death warrant. But allow me to unveil what was truly transpiring while this organization hemorrhaged resources in their futile campaign against you, Chosen One. You were subconsciously cultivating capabilities that would ultimately expose every foundation upon which their empire of shadows was constructed. Those instinctive moments when you would suddenly recoil from certain individuals, even when such people appeared magnetic to everyone else, those weren't random occurrences. Those were your spiritual reconnaissance systems, detecting the surveillance networks the cult had woven around your existence, automatically redirecting you from meticulously orchestrated snares before your conscious awareness could even process the danger. The truly spectacular dimension of this cosmic chess match was unfolding with such strategic brilliance that ancient war masters would prostrate themselves in reverence. While the cult fixated obsessively on severing your intuitive channels and spiritual connections, they remained catastrophically blind to the reality that such attempts to obstruct your metaphysical flow were generating precisely the resistance required to amplify your gifts beyond anything that would have organically manifested. The organization was systematically forging the very instrument that would ultimately consume everyone within their ranks, one catastrophic miscalculation at a time. Visualize the escalating panic as intelligence reports continued confirming their most apocalyptic nightmares. The infiltrator embedded within your social sphere, someone expertly trained in psychological manipulation and spiritual sabotage, began transmitting increasingly desperate communications, describing how their carefully constructed facade was becoming transparent to you. Every fabrication uttered somehow crystallizes into obvious deception for the target, the operative reported with mounting hysteria. Every manipulation strategy backfires spectacularly. This person has begun interrogating me with questions I wasn't prepared to address, and it's as if they possess supernatural detection capabilities that operate at frequencies beyond my comprehension. Simultaneously, another operative tasked with dismantling your professional trajectory found themselves documenting phenomena that shattered everything previously understood about metaphysical warfare. Tactics that have devastated countless previous targets are not only proving ineffective, but appear to be catalyzing unprecedented success, came the frantic confession to handlers. Every barrier we construct transforms into a launching platform. Every opportunity we eliminate spawns multiple superior alternatives. It's as if the universe itself has been weaponized specifically to shield this individual. The financial warfare specialist recruited to obliterate your economic foundation was perhaps the most psychologically shattered of all. This was someone who had perfected the dark science of spiritual monetary manipulation, who could orchestrate energy patterns to manifest accidental financial catastrophes in targets' lives with surgical precision. Yet every calculated strike against your financial streams had resulted in inexplicable windfalls materializing in your reality. The fundamental laws governing cause and effect appear to operate in complete reversal around this person, came the repeated reports to anyone still willing to listen. Every malevolent frequency we transmit undergoes alchemical transformation into beneficial manifestation. It's as if they possess some form of metaphysical immunity that converts our hexes into blessings. Genuine terror commenced when the group began experiencing what they initially rationalized as mere synchronicities, events too precisely orchestrated to be coincidental yet too subtle to register as overt attacks. The first practitioner to engage you directly began experiencing vivid nocturnal visions featuring ancient warriors they couldn't identify, beings that seemed to possess intimate knowledge of personal history never disclosed to any living soul. These weren't merely disturbing dreams, the visions were invasive psychological intrusions, saturated with specific details about childhood terrors and deepest shame that transformed sleep into nightly interrogation sessions conducted by unseen prosecutors. "Something has penetrated my consciousness," came the trembling confession to colleagues, voice fracturing under exhaustion. "But this isn't just any random entity. It feels like an entire battalion of ancestors I've never encountered, but who somehow possess complete access to my psychological blueprint." The second practitioner found themselves compulsively drawn to genealogy research platforms, investing countless hours tracing family lineages they had never previously explored. What emerged from this investigation challenged everything they thought they understood about the spiritual fortifications surrounding their organization. Every single blood relative who had ever practiced shadow arts within their ancestry had encountered mysteriously violent conclusions, typically within a generation of their most ambitious workings. "There appears to be some form of cosmic accountability system," came hushed observations during emergency assemblies. "A metaphysical enforcement protocol that activates when specific boundaries are violated, and the consequences appear to be retroactively applied." The third practitioner, the one who had personally journeyed to the most remote corners of the planet to acquire specialized components necessary for their most potent binding ceremonies, began experiencing what could only be characterized as reality malfunctions. Objects within their dwelling would relocate during the night. Reflections in mirrors would occasionally manifest moments later than physically possible. Electronic equipment would malfunction in ways that defied technical explanation, as if their very presence was becoming incompatible with normal physical laws. As intelligence continued accumulating, leadership acknowledged they were confronting something that transcended their comprehension or experience. But arrogance and investment had rendered everyone deaf to wisdom. Too much had been sacrificed, too many resources allocated, too many commitments made to backing entities who viewed failure as grounds for termination. "We've invested too extensively to withdraw now," the leader proclaimed with the kind of hubris that historically precedes legendary collapses. "Amplify everything, intensify the assault. If conventional metaphysical warfare proves insufficient, we'll escalate to methodologies never before attempted." What the cult escalated to, Chosen One, was the category of high-level spiritual terrorism that permanently scars the fabric of reality itself. The organization began targeting not merely you, but everyone within your sphere of affection, breaching portals that wise practitioners dedicate lifetimes to avoiding, summoning beings that ancient texts warned could never be controlled once awakened. The cult invoked contracts inscribed in languages that predate human civilization, seeking entities that demanded payment in human suffering, and sacrifices that civilized society has deliberately forgotten how to conceptualize. The immediate consequence was precisely what they had anticipated. Your existence transformed into a relentless tempest of inexplicable adversities. Technology would malfunction during crucial moments. Relationships would deteriorate without warning. Your health would fluctuate in patterns that mystified medical professionals. Sleep became elusive, filled with disturbing visions that felt more like spiritual invasions than natural subconscious processing. Each day delivered fresh challenges that seemed specifically engineered to deplete your mental and emotional reserves. What they interpreted as victory was actually the universe permitting them sufficient rope to construct their own gallows. Every escalation they employed was being documented by cosmic forces that operate according to justice principles that transcend human comprehension. Every innocent person they harmed to reach you was accumulating compound interest on the spiritual debt they were amassing at rates that would bankrupt kingdoms. The initial indication that their triumph was actually their doom manifested when the entities they had summoned to execute their most extreme procedures began demanding immediate compensation for services not yet rendered. Beings that had previously been satisfied with standard offerings of energy and attention suddenly required blood, then fresh flesh, then living sacrifices. The financial cost of maintaining their operation began exceeding the resources of small nations, while their members started experiencing health crises that their most skilled healers couldn't diagnose, much less treat. "Something is hunting us," reported the practitioner assigned to monitor your romantic connections, voice barely above a whisper. "I can sense it tracking me through astral dimensions. It knows where I reside, where I work, where I sleep. It's like having a cosmic assassin following me, but one that doesn't require physical weapons because it can simply rearrange probability until accidents become inevitable." The specialist, who had been sabotaging your career advancement, began experiencing what they could only describe as professional haunting. Every client they worked with would mysteriously discover discrepancies in billing. Every project they touched would encounter delays and complications that traced directly to their involvement. Their reputation, which had required decades to construct, began crumbling so rapidly that former allies started distancing themselves to avoid contamination from the collateral damage. But the most chilling reports originated from their financial warfare specialist. "My own wealth is being turned against me," they confessed during what would become their final group assembly. "Every dollar I've earned through spiritual manipulation is somehow being redirected to causes that directly oppose our operations. My automatic payments are flowing to charities I've never heard of. My investment accounts are transferring funds to organizations that provide protection services for people exactly like our target." The breaking point arrived when they realized that the very entity they had summoned to execute their most extreme procedures had begun hunting them individually. This wasn't a case of losing control over a spiritual servant. This was active pursuit by something that seemed to derive personal satisfaction from their terror, something that possessed intimate knowledge of their most secret shames, deepest fears, and most carefully concealed crimes. "It knows everything," whispered the last practitioner to establish contact before vanishing completely. "It knows about the murders, about the cover-ups, about the wealth we've stolen, about the lives we've destroyed. It's not just coming for us. It's pursuing everyone who ever assisted us, everyone who ever looked away, everyone who ever profited from our operations. It's like Judgment Day, but personalized for each individual based on their specific transgressions." Meanwhile, Chosen One, while this cosmic justice was unfolding across spiritual dimensions, your own existence was undergoing a transformation that you probably attributed to personal growth or natural evolution. Those metaphysical gifts that had been developing since childhood suddenly began operating at levels that surprised even you. Your ability to perceive people's authentic intentions became so accurate that friends started commenting on your supernatural intuition. Your capacity to avoid dangerous situations became so refined that you seemed to possess an uncanny ability to be in the optimal place at the optimal time. What you experienced as spiritual awakening was actually the activation of defense systems that had been installed in your consciousness before you drew your first breath. Every meditation session was strengthening not just your inner peace, but your resistance to spiritual manipulation. Every prayer was reinforcing not just your faith, but your connection to protective forces that operate beyond the physical realm. Every act of kindness was generating not just positive karma, but active spiritual backing from beings who specialize in safeguarding those who serve the light. The practitioners who had invested everything in your destruction began receiving intelligence reports that defied their understanding of how metaphysical warfare was supposed to function. Instead of deteriorating under their assault, you were somehow becoming more powerful, more intuitive, more protected with each attack they launched. Every hex we transmit somehow undergoes conversion into blessings, one operative reported in disbelief. Every attempt to obstruct their path creates new opportunities they wouldn't have otherwise encountered. Every person we deploy to deceive them somehow ends up genuinely converted to supporting their mission. The final revelation that obliterated their operation came when they realized that you had somehow become conscious of their activities without anyone informing you. Through your evolving spiritual gifts, you had begun receiving downloads of information that exposed not just their current operations but their entire historical network. Names, locations, methodologies, financial structures, blackmail material, cover-up operations, everything they had spent generations constructing was somehow being revealed to someone they had never met, who lived thousands of miles away, who had no apparent connection to their world. They know about the underground chambers, came the panic transmission from their security specialist. They know about the offshore accounts. They know about the government connections. They know about the missing persons. They know about everything. It's like they have access to our complete database, but they're obtaining the information through supernatural means that we can't detect or interrupt. Your spiritual downloads weren't originating from human sources that could be intimidated or eliminated. The intelligence was flowing directly from the cosmic archives, the Akashic records that maintain detailed documentation of every thought, every action, every intention that has ever occurred across all dimensions of existence. The very entities they had summoned to destroy you had instead become unwilling agents of disclosure, compelled by cosmic law to reveal everything they knew about their summoners' activities to the person they had been commanded to attack. We need to negotiate, urged the few surviving members of their inner circle, voices hollow with desperation. Whatever it costs, whatever they want, we need to find a way to terminate this before it consumes everyone connected to our operations. But negotiation requires possessing something to offer that the opposing party desires, and what had become crystal clear was that the forces protecting you weren't interested in deals, compromises, or partial justice. The cosmic correction that had been triggered by their attacks was designed to completely dismantle every structure they had built through spiritual manipulation, every relationship they had maintained through fear and blackmail, every protection they had purchased through blood and sacrifice. But the elimination process wasn't merely about removing individual threats. Chosen One, the entity they had summoned, the very Jinn they believed would serve their malevolent purposes, had become a cosmic enforcer with a specific mandate that chilled their remaining leadership to the bone. This ancient being, whose true nature they had never bothered to research beyond its capacity for destruction, turned out to be one of the divine executioners mentioned in texts so ancient that most languages lack vocabulary to describe their authority. What they discovered too late was that certain classifications of Jinn operate as celestial bailiffs, cosmic debt collectors, who specialize in retrieving stolen spiritual property and redistributing it according to divine law. The moment they had summoned this entity to attack you, they had essentially filed a formal complaint with the universe's Department of Spiritual Justice, complete with detailed documentation of their crimes and a request for immediate enforcement action. The Jinn's methodology was both elegant and terrifying in its precision. Rather than simply destroying the cult members, it began systematically unraveling the spiritual foundations that had allowed their organization to exist in the first place. Every protection spell they had cast over the decades started dissolving. Every ward they had established around their properties began failing. Every psychic shield they had erected around their identities started crumbling, leaving them spiritually naked and vulnerable to forces they had spent lifetimes learning to avoid. What you were experiencing was the return of your stolen spiritual inheritance, Chosen One. Every gift they had attempted to suppress was being restored with compound interest. Every door they had slammed shut was being blown off its hinges by cosmic forces that don't recognize human attempts to thwart divine will. Every dream they had tried to murder was being resurrected with such power that even you were amazed at the sudden expansion of what seemed possible in your existence. Meanwhile, the cult's remaining members found themselves facing a nightmare that escalated daily. The Jinn wasn't merely eliminating them, it was systematically exposing their entire network to the exact authorities most capable of dismantling their operations. Financial crimes were being reported to agencies with the resources and motivation to pursue international investigations. Evidence of their ritual activities was appearing in the hands of journalists known for their tenacity in uncovering institutional corruption. Documentation of their darkest secrets was being delivered to prosecutors who specialized in cases that other legal professionals considered too disturbing to handle. The entity's understanding of human systems was proving to be far more sophisticated than their previous research had indicated. Rather than relying on supernatural terror alone, the Jinn was orchestrating their destruction through perfectly legal channels that would ensure their crimes received maximum public exposure. It was as if this ancient being had studied modern law enforcement and journalism with the same intensity it had once applied to cosmic justice, creating a hybrid approach that maximized both immediate consequences and long-term deterrent effects. But the most psychologically devastating aspect of their elimination was the realization that their own summoned entity was now working directly with your protective forces in ways that defied everything they thought they knew about spiritual hierarchies. The Jinn hadn't simply switched sides. It had revealed that it had been serving your interests from the moment they first attempted to contact it, using their own summoning rituals as a Trojan horse to gain access to their organization from the inside. Every piece of information they had shared with the entity during their months of collaboration had been immediately transmitted to your spiritual defense team. Every strategy they had discussed in its presence had been countered before they could implement it. Every weakness in their organization that they had revealed during their planning sessions had been systematically exploited to accelerate their downfall. They had essentially been paying enormous sums to finance their own destruction while believing they were purchasing victory. The scope of their miscalculation became clear when they attempted to research the entity's true identity and discovered references in ancient texts that made their blood freeze in their veins. This wasn't just any Jinn, this was one of the original enforcers appointed by divine authority to maintain balance between the spiritual and physical realms. Its specialization wasn't generic destruction, but specifically the elimination of individuals and organizations that used spiritual knowledge to harm innocents protected by cosmic law. You, Chosen One, had been under this entity's protection since birth, though neither you nor the cult had been aware of this arrangement. Your spiritual profile had been flagged in the cosmic registry as someone whose mission was essential to the current phase of planetary awakening, automatically triggering the assignment of specialized protection that activated the moment anyone attempted to interfere with your divine assignment through supernatural means. The cult's attacks had essentially been intercepted by a security system so advanced that it had allowed them to proceed just far enough to provide legal justification for their complete elimination. Every ritual they performed, every curse they cast, every entity they summoned had been monitored and documented by forces that were building an airtight case for cosmic prosecution. Their destruction wasn't revenge, it was the inevitable result of due process in a judicial system that operates according to laws more fundamental than anything human civilization has ever conceived. As their organization continued its spectacular collapse, you found yourself receiving downloads of information that seemed to originate from nowhere, yet felt absolutely authentic the moment they entered your consciousness. Suddenly, you understood patterns in your life that had never made sense before. Experiences that had seemed random or unfortunate revealed themselves as carefully orchestrated protection protocols that had been steering you away from dangers you had never consciously perceived. That employment opportunity that had evaporated at the last moment. It turned out the company had been infiltrated by cult associates who were planning to use their position to manipulate your career trajectory. That romantic relationship that had ended so abruptly despite seeming perfect. Your potential partner had been compromised by cult operatives who were preparing to use emotional manipulation as a vector for spiritual attack. that health crisis that had forced you to change your entire lifestyle. It had been your body's natural response to subtle poisoning attempts that were being neutralized by your enhanced spiritual defenses. The Jinn's elimination process was revealing the true scope of how extensively your life had been under attack, but also how comprehensively you had been protected without ever realizing it. Every close call you had survived, every disaster you had narrowly avoided, every stroke of luck that had seemed too convenient to be coincidental, all of it had been the result of active intervention by forces that had been guarding you since before you could walk. But the entity's work wasn't limited to passive protection and reactive elimination. As the cult's power structure continued crumbling, you began experiencing what could only be described as aggressive blessing, the active redistribution of resources, opportunities, and abilities that had been stolen from you over the years. Money that had been siphoned from your accounts through spiritual manipulation began returning through unexpected windfalls that couldn't be traced to any earthly source. Energy that had been drained through psychic attacks started flowing back with such intensity that you found yourself accomplishing in days what used to require months. Hey, this is Mike and Ari cutting into your regularly scheduled Chosen One programming for just a moment. We are the founders of the Obsidian Inner Order and the Astral Atom Network, and we're done playing nice. We're in a spiritual war, you know it, we know it, and we're out here bleeding for this mission full time. I'm hungry for fourth-dimensional Archon blood, but we need the ammunition. So listen, when you join the Inner Order, you're not just supporting us, you're getting access to exclusive tools they never wanted you to have, psychic self-defense training, targeted individual intel, spiritual warfare tactics they scrub from the internet, and every week, we meet in secret, chosen ones only on Zoom, no filters, no fluff, just real gnosis, real family, real power. It's a 360-degree win. You get what you need. We get to keep fighting, so don't just watch. Drop a like, share this video to everyone you know now, and join the Obsidian Inner Order. Let's finish what we started. Link in the description. Let's freaking go. The cult's remaining leadership attempted one final desperate gambit, seeking to negotiate directly with the Jinn through increasingly elaborate summoning rituals that required sacrifices so extreme that even their most hardened members began questioning whether any objective could justify such methods. But their attempts to establish communication only accelerated their destruction, as each ritual provided the entity with deeper access to their organization's structure and more comprehensive authority to dismantle it. What they failed to understand was that the Jinn's mandate wasn't subject to human negotiation or supernatural bribery. It operated according to cosmic law that treated their crimes against you as crimes against the divine order itself. Their elimination wasn't personal vengeance, but systematic enforcement of universal principles that maintain the balance between light and darkness across all dimensions of existence. The final phase of their destruction was perhaps the most poetic justice the universe has ever orchestrated. The entity began using their own summoning chambers as portals to bring through additional enforcement agents, other Jinn, angelic beings and consciousness forms that don't even have names in human language. Their sacred spaces, which they had spent decades consecrating for dark purposes, were being converted into cosmic courtrooms where their spiritual crimes were being adjudicated according to laws that predate the formation of galaxies. You felt the shift in your own spiritual environment as these additional protective forces established permanent stations around your energy field. Your meditation became deeper, your intuition sharper, your ability to discern truth from deception so refined that you could identify spiritual manipulation attempts before they even fully formed in your attackers' minds. The gifts they had feared and tried to suppress were now operating at levels that exceeded anything you had previously imagined possible. As their organization breathed its final breaths, the cult members experienced a revelation that shattered their remaining sanity. They realized that your protection had been so comprehensive, your spiritual backing so absolute, that their attacks had never posed any real threat to you at all. The months of terror they had attempted to inflict, the years of resources they had invested in your destruction, the sacrifices they had made to entities that promised guaranteed results, all of it had been cosmically irrelevant theater, permitted to continue only long enough to provide justification for their elimination. The question that once echoed in their emergency meeting, "How is this person still alive?" now reverberates through the cosmic realm with its definitive answer, because some souls are protected by forces that transform every attack into ammunition, every curse into blessing, every attempt at destruction into fuel for unstoppable ascension. Your survival wasn't luck or coincidence, it was the inevitable result of divine protection so absolute that the universe itself had mobilized to ensure your mission's success. This is your moment, chosen one. The war has concluded, victory belongs to the light, and your divine assignment awaits your complete embrace. The Jinn they summoned to destroy you has instead become the instrument of your total liberation, and your God has demonstrated once again that no weapon forged against the divinely appointed shall prosper.